Good evening. This is the meeting of the Finance Committee of the Town of Yarmouth, and we call it to order. This open meeting of the Finance Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth related to the outbreak of COVID-19. The order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. This order does not require public participation except for certain regulatory matters requiring a public hearing. At the discretion of the chair, a method for public participation may be provided for matters that do not require it under this order. For this meeting, the Finance Committee is convening by video conference via Zoom app. Members of the public who wish to view and hear the proceedings live may join the Zoom meeting. The Zoom link at every meeting of this body is posted on the town website under agendas and minutes for the Finance Committee. Individuals who join Zoom may submit written comments and questions in real time by using the Zoom chat function, and the chat messages received during the meeting may be read by the committee chair or designee during the meeting. This meeting is being recorded. For those of us appearing on the Zoom video conference, please be aware that you can be seen and heard unless you have muted your microphone and camera. Panelists are asked to mute their mics except when speaking and attempt to minimize background noise in your location to maintain audio quality. Also be advised, open windows on your computer may be broadcast and recorded if you hit the screen share button on your computer. Anything captured by this Zoom meeting and teleconference will be recorded. So you need to take a vote, Mr. Chair, for that.
Thank you, Pat. So we're going to do a roll call to start the evening. Good evening, everyone. If we could just get a acknowledgement of attendance. George?
Here.
Robert?
Here.
Jack?
Here.
Sarah?
Here.
And I am present as well. Once again, we do not have meeting minutes from last week's meeting, but we are working on those. Hopefully we'll get them soon. We have 3 presentations tonight. We have Mark Grills from the Inspectional Services in the Building Department. We have Bruce Murphy from Health, and we have Jeff Colby from the DPW Department. So they're gonna, Mark's gonna start first, Mark Grills, and then we're gonna have Bruce Murphy come in and then Jeff Colby at the end. So Mark, you are good to go. I think you're up and running on your screen, so.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Mark Rose, Inspectional Services Director and the Building Commissioner. I'm going to start. I should just start reading, Brian.
Yes.
All right. So our mission statement, our primary role is public safety. We protect the lives and the property of the residents as well as visitors to the town of Yarmouth, and also contribute to the economic development by educating the public and through equitable enforcement of the Mass State Building Code and the local bylaws. All right. Recap and key points highlights of this past year. With COVID, it's been kind of crazy, but permits issued for FY21, July through January 14th, when this was done, is 4,817 permits. Includes all the permits that we issue. Turnovers, the amount of cash we've turned over to the town as a result of those permits is $347,000. Violations, we've been a little bit, haven't been too busy with the violations this year as a result of COVID. We've been kind of addressing the number of permits that we've been receiving. The fire and police responses, we're at 24, that's about average. Permitting consultation with myself up to date, it's been 400 plus. I've been with COVID, it's been phone conversations, Zoom meetings, or actually going to the site or going to a contractor's office and meeting with them, or architect's offices and meeting with them. And because we weren't allowed to let the public into the building. Site plan review, where we meet with developers and all of the department heads. send a representative or show up themselves, and we review an application or a project such as the school that's coming up. We just had that one about a month ago. Other big projects, hotels, things like that, commercial work usually. Lately it's been on Zoom, but some years we have 20. This year so far we've had 10. That's a recap of the budgets. Nothing special there. All right, the changes, the salary increases were in accordance with negotiated collective bargaining agreements. The 2 open positions in the building department, an administrative retirement has resulted in the opening that postponed being filled as they're trying to save, they're trying to, save a little bit of money with the uncertainty of COVID and what it was going to do to our budgets. There's been a plumbing inspector's position advertised since July with only 1 unqualified applicant inquiry. And as of today, we just hired somebody for that position. He should be starting on February 8th, providing he passes his physical. 1 admin employee in health is not being filled at this time. Budget increase process has begun to request making the 2nd housing inspector position, which was approved as a part-time position last year. We're trying to get that a full-time position as a result of the short-term rental housing increase. Has been a huge increase in that. The state now notifies us when we receive money. So when they have to register with the state. So those the increase in permitting over in the health department is it's been a lot. And we're requesting a modest increase in the expenses for the building department. Challenges facing us, both departments have seen a large increase in the volume of phone calls, permits, and licensing. And staff is increasingly stressed with this new way to do business without being able to meet people. It's kind of hard to, it's kind of hard to review plans and things like that on small computer screens. And we're constantly trying to figure out a way to get permitting done. We've never closed since COVID started. We've always been open. I've been here every day since it started, every day that we're in business. Maintaining the ability, this is a challenge, is maintaining the ability to provide a level of service that the public has come to expect. At one time, we were issuing permits in 10 to 14 days, trying to get building permits out. Now we're 3 to 4 weeks, pushing the limits of what we're legally required to get done. The storage of documents has reached its limits. We're going paperless to the best of our ability to still meet the records retention law requirements. And Ed's been helpful. We're about to start a new permitting program, which should limit, cut down quite a bit on the amount of paper that we receive. We're going to try to do a lot of permitting online and a lot of paperless permitting. Training for staff on the permitting program while conducting day-to-day operations. That's another challenge. We're trying to, one day I answered the phones here. I got 90 phone calls. I didn't get a single thing done, but I answered 90 phone calls. And training of the staff while trying to do day-to-day operations and keep the public happy. Have somebody answer the phone. That's going to be a challenge coming up. Next. Recommendations, just consider the staffing levels against what the workload actually is, just about, a good review of that. We've received word that we're looking into filling those 2 positions that are vacant. And then as far as the full-time housing inspector position, we're not sure yet. We did present that to the Board of Selectmen at a meeting recently, Bruce and I did, but we didn't really get a response from them, whether or not they'd let us fill that position. And Ed was helpful in getting that into the presentation so that the selectmen could at least see it. I guess that's the start of the process. And then eventually we'll be coming back to you guys for your blessing. Increase the $10,000 overtime budget to accommodate the training opportunities as well as additional workloads on the weekends as a result of call outs from fire, police, and whatnot. And also COVID tracing, restaurant visits, and et cetera. Some of the health department staff have been working 7 days a week. And with the overtime, it'd be helpful to be able to just pay them. Comp time builds up and then you can't use it because you're too busy working. So, by union contract, we have to pay them out in a certain amount of time. And then update the vehicle fleet, which we're luckily starting and we're looking at plug-in hybrids as a likely replacement for the junk vehicles that we're getting, but they're better than what we have now. So new vehicles would be helpful, reliable vehicles. And I think it would help both departments if we have those. And actually, Pat, is going to help me to address that next year. Oh, that's it.
Thanks, Mark. Anybody have any questions for Mark?
I do actually. Oh, sorry, George.
Go ahead.
Mark, you said that you're at the limits of the state mandated time for permitting turnaround. What, it used to be 3 to 5 days and now you're at 3 to 4 weeks. Like, what is your state requirement?
The state requirement, the state requires that that within 30 days of receiving a complete application, we must review the application and either grant the permit or deny the permit. So at 3 to 4 weeks now, if there's issues with the permit, we're trying to get people their permits quicker.
Mhm.
That's commerce. That's people want to go out and make a living. And, it's also, we like to receive those permitting fees to turn over to the town. So if we started issuing permits in a hurry without giving the review of the plans, there's a safety issue there that somebody could get hurt. Or it's a cost issue with a contractor, if we don't review the plan and they build something that's not to code, and then they blame the town for building something that's not to code, when, even though the building code says that you have to meet the code, whether we approve the plan or not. We don't like to put people in that position. That's a waste of their money as well.
So how many people do you have reviewing stuff right now?
Right now, there's a process. We receive the permit, it gets entered in the database by our administrative staff, and it's handed over to Tim Sears, and Tim Sears handles the review of the applications. If he gets backlogged, Brad helps out if he can, but the way that we've set up as a result of COVID is that Brad's been out on the road all day, every day, and Tim's doing the review and scheduling inspections.
So you've got essentially one person doing the job of like 2 or 3 people.
Yeah, well, it's manageable.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
George, you have a question?
Just let me answer that. It's manageable because he wants it to be manageable, but it's very stressful and difficult. Thank you for letting me share that.
Thanks, Pat.
Mark, just a general question. Given that you've had to operate in this new environment that's more dependent upon use of internet and things we didn't use as much before, what have you learned? Have you learned something that could be applied going forward?
We've been trying to go paperless, and with this online permitting program through Acela, we've been working through the kinks. We've learned that the public is limited in its will to adapt to new technology. So we spend a lot more time on the phone with them, trying to walk them through the program. I was on the phone today for half an hour with a gentleman, trying to get him to use the online services to do research on a property. I didn't want to just send them the link and say, here, look it up. So the public is some of the higher end contractors, the guys that have staff that can do that work for them, they're willing to go online and do this stuff. But some of the mom and pop shops, the guy in the pickup truck, they don't have the time to sit in front of the computer, nor do they want to. But with this new program that we had demonstrated to us a month ago, it seems it's a much more simplified process. I know that Acela has been very cumbersome to the public, and it's made it difficult for them. So being patient with the public is probably, with the volume of phone calls, I think that they will adapt. We're learning ourselves. We're sending work home with people because of COVID. We're trying to separate people out. So, we're learning every day, to be quite honest.
So maybe let me put it this way. Would you like to go back to the old way, or do you think there's something to be found as a benefit in the new way?
I think that the new way is going to be very beneficial. It's going to speed the processes up. The new program is going to allow all other departments, we can disseminate the information to all other departments instead of the public having to do that, where right now they have to foot their permit around to get signatures from approvals from other departments, where once this new program is in place, my staff and I will be able to just click a button on who needs to see it, and everybody will get the information at exactly the same time. And that's going to be a huge speed up take away some of the stress of the application process by not having to, chase after information. So, and the public, we get phone calls all day, every day about where's my permit, where's my permit, where's my permit. With this new program, they'll be able to go online and just look it up themselves. We won't have to answer the phone. And, that allows us to do other things when we're not talking on the phone, obviously. So I think that the new program is going to be great. I can't wait for it to get into place.
And Mark, when is that? I'm sorry, I might have missed that. When do you think that's going to happen?
Next week, we're starting a kickoff meeting with them. So Ed's secured, Ed and Svetlana have secured some, I guess we're ready to go. Ed's got us the building department and the health department meeting with them at some point next week. So it should be very soon.
And will that program do things like auto respond to the applicant if there's been a problem, or will they get an email that's auto generated saying, hey, step 2 has been denied because of something or other? Will that happen or no?
I think that we can set it up so that they'll get an email response. So when there's activity or there's an action on their application from
Right.
the department, I believe that action will be recorded and sent to the applicant by email. I don't know that, honestly, Brian, I'm not sure that we got that far with the kickoff meeting because it was only like an hour and a half long.
That would just save all those pestering calls of, hey, what step are we on? Where are we? Where are we?
Absolutely. I'm trying to find ways to not have to deal with that all the time. So, we're trying to, for the information that we need to send out, the information that we're required to put into the computer, if we're answering the phones, we obviously can't do that. I'm researching through the state plumbing board and the state electrical board to find out if we can force the plumbers and the electricians to go online permitting. Right now, the way that the plumbing code is written, it specifically says that we have to accept an application no matter how it's sent to us, either in writing, in the mail, or over the counter, or electronically. So we can't force like the plumber's hands. And I think last year we had 1,700 plumbing permits alone, and then gas permits on top of that. I have the numbers floating around here somewhere.
Anybody have any other questions?
How much time does the deputy commissioner work?
Mr. Brandolini work? He's in here 2-3 days a week. I think he's scheduled 15 hours a week.
How many?
18.
Anybody have anything else for Mark?
Brian, I got a quick comment.
Okay, go, Robert.
I've thrown 3 or 4 different projects at Mark, and I'd just like to say Mark's office is definitely keeping up and staying responsive to needs. I don't always like the answer. Actually, usually I don't like the answer, but you do get it.
Thanks, Robert.
I appreciate it, Mark. Just thanks.
Thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman,
Go for it.
and I apologize to anybody for being late, hopping off another call, but so just on that, Mark, on that challenge of smaller mom and pop people not necessarily knowing how to navigate the online piece, is there an opportunity at some point in the future to do some kind of training that might help that for the public?
There is, if they're willing to accept it. And once we're open to the public again, I've actually, when we remodeled here, I had 2 computer systems and 2 monitors placed at each counter, 2 for health and 2 for building. So the contractors that come in that don't want to do it at home, we can, bring them to the keyboard and say, here, do it here. If you need our help, and that's the way that the staff still has to get up and help them, assist them at the counter, but hopefully we're training them that way as well. And we had been doing that for a bit through Acela. It was a little more cumbersome, but the computers at the counter also allow realtors and lawyers and insurance companies that want to research our files. We don't have paper here anymore. It's all online. So now I'm just direct them to the computer at the counter, and we can help them that way. And if they need something printed, they can ask us to help them out.
Yeah, I just had in my mind like online videos that you could link to on the town's website or something.
Well, that's a good question that I will have to ask the whoever's supplying us with the Viewpoint Government Solutions program.
Yeah, I find training is an important part to getting people acclimated to making a change. Otherwise, they sort of do tend to cling to that. Oh, this is the way I've always done it. right?
We just want a tutorial is all we're looking for. I'm gonna ask the question actually next week.
Chairman?
Great. And then,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
This is Ed Sentio.
Ed.
I might be able to help Stephanie with that. We actually did 16 online tutorials or videos that are on our website and are on channel 18 for the payment of taxes and dog licenses and beach stickers. And they were simple voice over PowerPoint with screenshots of the different screens. And we think that that would be a key way to roll out the new system's functionality to customers as well.
yeah, that's exactly the type of thing that I have in mind, Ed. Exactly, because it's sort of like, I'm having to deal with this in like some customer service stuff myself, where it's like, you can say, try this, go through this, and if you still have challenges, then call the staff, and that way it's, less time that you have to spend sort of teaching the basics, frees up your staff a bit. A question I have just regarding, I'm looking through just the budget book, and maybe I'm just missing a spot in here, but I'm not seeing anything here in terms of just sort of income from, permits or anything like that. Where would I find that?
In the budget itself or in this?
No, in the budget book,
Oh geez, I
the
don't know.
Bible.
Maybe Ed knows.
Yeah, Ed would likely know that.
Yeah, what we do for the non-enterprise funds is the revenues don't go in there. Those aren't normally in the budget book, but if you look at water, you look at septage, and obviously Jeff and Laura and Roby are on the call, but those have the revenues and expenses because we need those to balance out. What you'll see for revenues would be in the revenue trend report that you all get on a monthly basis. And we also have a version of that, that's the revenue detail, which actually breaks out each one of the high level items into the actual individual line items. So you could see the plumbing versus gas versus building permits, if you'd like to see that on a 4-year trend basis to go along with the revenue trend summary reports that we send out.
So Ed, those fees go into an enterprise account. They don't go into the general operating.
I guess what I was trying to contrast was that the enterprise funds in the budget book have their revenues. The revenues from non-enterprise funds do not show up in the budget book.
But they do show up on that monthly report that Maria Ruskova sends to you. And it can break it down, but it's a 4-year review on a monthly basis and then an annual basis in the same spreadsheet. So you should get that
Yeah.
monthly.
I mean, in terms of if we're building a budget, right? There's what's the income that's coming in and what's the money that's going out in terms of cost, right? And so I understand there's going to be differences around those, but with those fees coming in, where do they go? Like, what do they go towards? Do they go towards
They go to the general fund pot of money.
Okay.
To actually balance the entire budget.
So it's not like Mark gets to hold on to, if he's doing more business, it's not like he gets to hold on to any portion of that.
Mark doesn't cover his costs by design with his permit fees. We went through a structure where we actually allocated costs to the building department and the health department. And by design, the selectmen said, well, we're going to allow your fees to cover 80% of your cost. And then for health, because the other 20% is just customer service. And then for health department, we had their fees cover 50% of their direct costs, not their indirect costs. So no, they don't get to hold on to the fees because they don't pay for their operations.
Okay, and I guess I'm just trying to get a sense of if there's X amount more coming in terms of volume that their department has to manage.
Yeah.
What does that translate to in terms of additional revenue?
So if there is more than what was budgeted, and right now they're at about 73% of what they were looking at pre-COVID 2020, there's been a slowdown. so they don't have excess revenues at this point in time. But if there are excess revenues or reductions in expenses, that goes to free cash.
Okay. So Mark, when you say like you're really busy, a lot of it has to do with sort of helping on the customer service side, not necessarily overall increase in permits being pulled?
That's correct. I have stacks of papers here. Site plan review, for instance, is a lengthy process. And once I receive an application for site plan review, I have 11 days to review that and put everything into writing, what requirements they're needed, what they need relief from the Board of Appeals. Building permits, building code is fairly simple. It's very generic. But on top of that, I have right now 21 reported illegal apartments, and they're in all different phases of violation notices and second notices and court filings. We've been to court twice in the past year. I have 2 court cases there, and there are 2 others that have been resolved. So we're writing violation notices themselves, going out and confirming that the violation exists. Or about the only thing we haven't really bothered with this year is signage. But junk cars, we get calls for that. Boats in the front of people's properties, we get those phone calls, and they're all in the zoning bylaw. We have to address them if they're brought to our attention. So illegal apartments has been a big one that's been kicking up a lot this year. So multifamily units.
Mr. Chairman, can I just add some additional remarks to
Yes,
my
of
previous
course.
statement? The 73% or 73, 74% is a point in time based on the first 2 quarters. It is unbelievable what the building department did for fiscal year 2020, and particularly the second half of the year, in terms of being very close to 100% of their permit volume. And I know Mark has, and it depends on when projects are submitted. I know Mark has a number of projects that he's working on and coaching people on, and that number of 73% could change, fairly quickly. So I just want to not leave it off that they're behind in some way. It doesn't always go in the same pattern. And when you look at their entire year pattern with the second half of the year last year, heavily impacted by COVID, they did a tremendous job of bringing in building department revenue.
Right. I'm just trying to get a sense of the overall situation. So intuitively, that makes sense that things slowed down in the first part of COVID. And then as people kind of figured out, hey, I've got to expand, they started pulling more permits. So the overall volume in that second half of the year is more kind of on par, but it's harder because you're working remotely in terms of your ability to get things done. Is that an accurate summary?
I've never worked remotely. I've been here every day since COVID started. My staff has been, but I've been here, if the phones aren't being answered, I'm here answering the phones. But there are several large projects right now that are going to be going through zoning board of appeals for the relief that they need. We've had looks at the tasty buffet site, for instance, that I had to have that building taken down. We've actually had hotel owners looking to buy that property to put a hotel there, and they're looking at the Moose Lodge for another potential project. And we just had another building taken down. They had it taken down themselves over at Pirates Cove, the mini golf. They took that building down, and they're going to be doing some renovations there, putting up some new structures in there. So there's a lot of things that are going on that some things I can't talk about because I'm sworn to secrecy by the developer. They don't want everybody to know their business. So, but there's activity. They don't have a permit yet. That's for sure. They haven't. It doesn't matter what they say to me until they write me a check for that building permit application. That's when it's a real job. But for now, there's a lot of activity, a lot of interest in what's going on in the town of Yarmouth, and hopefully things do continue to stay busy. We generally get very busy. March and April, we start picking up again because it's springtime. People are thinking of what renovations they want to do, and it's hopefully it's going to be a busy year. It sounds like it's going to be a busy year, but I won't know for sure until it happens.
All right. Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
And
Thank
Ed.
you.
Anybody else have anything for Mark? Great. So I think we're all set. Thanks, Mark. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Next up, we have Bruce Murphy with the Health Division. I think he's on the call somewhere.
Yes, I am.
Hey, Bruce, how are you?
Good.
Your presentation is loaded up, so if you want to just jump right in, that would be great.
Okay. Bruce Murphy, Director of Health for the Health Department. Mission statement is there before you. I don't know if you want me to read everything or how
You
the
can proceed
presentation
however
goes.
you see fit.
All right. We're here to protect the health and the environment of the residents of the town through enforcement of state and local regulations, administering health and safety programs, protective planning and regulations, and preventive programs. Definitely the COVID pandemic from last year to this year, it has put the department along with the town and the state and the country on first alert, and that's where we're spending majority of our time within the health department. COVID heavily has impacted the daily operations in the permitting process, review, inspections, complaints, and response and enforcement. The Health Division still conducts and monitors contact tracing, working with our VNA nurses and state nurses, enforcing Governor Baker's orders, sector specific guidelines, still responding to complaints related to COVID-19, and continuing education efforts into the public. Last year saw us participate again in the White Ribbon Day, a global movement that works to end domestic violence that was planned and carried out in conjunction with Independence House, the police department, sheriff's office, DA's office, the health department put a lot of effort into that planning that was held, event held down at Cape Cod Community College. We're able to get that done pretty much at the beginning of the year before the impact of coronavirus. We did also, for our fourth consecutive year, Sticker Shock campaign to combat underage drinking. Health Department worked with all 9 liquor stores in town, along with Gosnold, in taking part of this. This was something that we've taken the last few years and in part of working with the county drug enforcement and alcohol substance enforcement. Assisted the senior center a lot with the distribution of grab and go meals. From the summer when we worked with the schools were passing out meals. There was also meals being passed out at the senior center. We looked at their operation of how they did it. And we also had one of our staff person assist in the meals that went out weekly. Still assisting, they had a weekly coffee meal, and we're still assisting with soup on Fridays. That's something that we're continuing to partnership with the senior center on, getting meals out into within the community. The budget that we'll be discussing tonight is laid out there in front of you. The proposed increase is request a second housing inspector that Mark touched a little bit on, that was presented at the selectmen meeting, and also expenses going back into human services. I know your board took that up, and I met with your board, I want to say sometime in the summer, to discuss human services, and greatly appreciate the money that you put in towards the end of the year that we could put towards the human services. Good. As I mentioned, the funding for the 12 human services were cut at the beginning of the year, July 1st. We were able to, as I said, work with the finance. Appreciate your committee doing that and putting in 30,000 that we could put in for the start of this year towards the human services. The other issue, as Mark mentioned, the principal office assistant position has been vacant since March, which has resulted in a backlog of license and infecting customer services in the timely issuance and review of permits. Going forward, we continue to face the challenges of the coronavirus. That will be with us all year, even as we go through vaccination. I believe we'll still be having a concern with possible spreads. So that was something that we'll see impacting this department, because we'll be spending a lot of our work time on that. And then also construction work. The other big area that we have here is the properties the state has identified as short-term rentals. They are required now to license with the state. And as we looked at the state list that had approximately 740 state short-term rentals, we cross-referenced that against our list and picked up about 400 new short-term rentals. So that's new money that will be coming in each year. So I think that's a big impact that we're going to see, which is great. The overall money that's projected to come in from the short-term rentals is about $1 million. And as I understand, that's going all towards the wastewater planning. However, what we get is the individual rental fees, and that just averaging that out at about $75 per rental, that's 30,000 new money that's coming in. And that's only after the first quarter. So I would see that increasing. Okay. And that money can be used to help pay the housing inspector second housing inspector that's being requested. These were the human services that I discussed with you this summer. We're grateful that we're able to put them back in. Very supportive of and used within the community. It's a wide range of services that the town has provided for a number of years. The food pantry is probably one of the biggest uses financially that we support, along with an Independence House that deals with domestic abuse, male and female, within the community. Okay. So we strongly request filling the vacant administrative position within the office, because that's creating delay in permitting and getting permits out. And with only basically one secretary trying to do two positions, we just keep falling behind. The reason that position is open is the principal secretary took the position up in the town selectman's office. The other secretary we had in the office moved over to that position and then left one position open since March. That is in the budget as vacant and funded to be requested to be filled. Addition of the second full-time housing inspector that I've mentioned a couple times is needed to keep up with inspections of all these housing rentals. The approximately 3,200 we have, plus the 400 we just received from the state short-term rentals, and I'm sure we'll be getting some more short-term rentals as the summer season comes. We need to get into these units to inspect them for meeting state housing code and making sure they're safety rentals for people to live in. The funding from this program for the inspector, the current inspector, and the secretary can be funded from the fees generated from the individual rentals. Questions?
Anybody have questions for Bruce?
I do.
Go ahead.
So Bruce, thank you for your presentation, and thank you for all the work that you've had to do during COVID. I can't imagine what your life has been like. I can, because I do a lot of eviction prevention work, but the question, I'm just trying to get clear in my head. So you have an admin position that you are looking to add that, based on the numbers I see in the budget book, is what, 43,000? Close to 44, is that right?
That sounds correct.
Okay, and then you're also looking to add another inspector position, but I'm not seeing that in
Correct,
the budget.
a housing inspector. I think that's shown, I'm not sure which page you're looking under your spreadsheets, but I think it might be listed under housing inspector, and it lists 2 for a total of 115,000. So if you go down that list that you just mentioned of the 43,000, if you went down further on the personnel summary figures, you would see housing inspector 2 for a budget salary of 115,810.
I'm sorry, what's the total?
$115,810 for 2 housing inspectors. It's on, I'm looking at the personnel summary sheet.
I see it in the personnel summary sheet. The challenge is that we have a basic, like previous sheet before that shows
Yes.
us just like what the FY21 was, what the FY20 actual was, what the FY22 request is, and what the change is, and I'm not seeing it there. So that's
You
where
might also have a sheet, the employee wage detail sheet. That would list the first person as a housing inspector. There's 2 housing inspectors listed separately.
my problem is it doesn't tell me what it was compared to the previous year.
Yeah, so Bruce, if you went to your straight budget line, which I'm seeing as starting on 7-5, and we look starting on, let me get my 7.5 there. I think what Stephanie is saying is that the existing housing inspector position at 117, building inspector, sorry, let me get to health, is not reflecting that $43,000 increase. Is that what you're saying, Stephanie?
No, I'm seeing the $43,000 increase for the admin position. What I'm saying is I'm not seeing the additional, I don't know, 55, 60 grand for the second inspector.
Right, because in your personnel summary, under housing inspector, it's 1 across the whole place and a budget of 60,194 since 110. So she's not seeing that second one, and I agree, I don't see it there either.
So let me help you with that. This is
Yes, Ed,
Cynthia.
thank you.
Yeah, any new addition to staffing has to be approved by the Board of Selectmen. So
Oh,
they're
so it hasn't been approved yet to be added to the budget?
they're going over their budget. So that has to be approved by the Board of Selectmen. So it's not in the budget at this point in time.
All right, so it's an ask, but not an approve yet.
That's correct.
Thank you. So that's why it's sitting at 6193.
Okay, so, thank you. I'm like, what am I missing here? So that's helpful to understand. And then again, understanding, Ed's point before of like things going into general fund, not necessarily showing up in your budget, but in terms of what you said about $75 a pop in terms of rental registration fees, you're expecting to generate 60-odd thousand? Is that right, or more?
Just for the new short-term rental fees, the 400 that we're expecting that we're picking up at the end of the year, and right now from the state last year, we're expecting 30,000 new money from that each year. On
Okay.
top of the roughly 3,000 current rentals that we will monitor each year for an annual permitting.
So, right, I heard you say that was just in one quarter. So it sounded to me like you were expecting that there would be more, you would pick up more non-registered units.
Correct.
Okay, so I guess what I'm trying to get straight in my head, Bruce, is trying to kind of offset these things in my head. So you're
Sure.
looking essentially for an additional 100,000 in staffing increases and potentially bringing in an additional 30 to 50. Is that right? And then the rest would just come out of the operational budget.
If I could chime in here for just 1 second, we currently, in this approved budget that we're operating under now, we have 1 full-time housing inspector And last year, we were approved for a part-time housing inspector. So what the goal was, with this increase in work, we were hoping to make the part-time housing inspector now a full-time housing inspector. So we already have 1.5. We were just hoping to get another half. And we were waiting for we did present, Ed put it in the budget presentation last month. We didn't get feedback from the selectmen, and it's not been approved yet. But we did want to hopefully have the discussion, give you a heads up that it was on its way. We're going to make.
Okay, so the overall increase wouldn't be like 100,000, it'd be like 43 plus 25, maybe to get you to that 25 or 30 to get you to that full time.
Yeah.
Can
yeah,
I
28,
help
30.
again, Ed Centio?
Sure, Ed, go ahead.
Thank you. Oh, did I interrupt somebody that was
No,
coming?
no, go ahead, Ed.
All right, thank you. The $43,000 is a vacant position already budgeted, so that's not new money needed. What the new money needed, according to some estimates, is $55,000, not including benefits. So you might take $40,000 for benefits. So you're talking about, $70,000 in total to bring on the new housing inspector. And the part-time person that's working in that department now was funded out of the internship money from the town administration, not out of the building
Okay,
department fund.
thank you for clarifying that, Ed.
You're welcome.
Okay, so you're looking to seek that increase. OPEB, because we deferred that last year, and then funding again the human services that we funded. Did what we do a couple months ago, was that basically funding the human services at half of the level that we would normally do it, and this is bringing it back up to the normal level?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's it for me.
Anybody have any further questions?
Just real quick.
Go.
Bruce, I think you actually touched on a lot of this, and I kind of hinted at it, but I remember last year that part of the reason that you were kind of so optimistic about getting all of this additional income is because you did have a really productive intern who was like searching down a lot of, were you able to keep that person on, or I'm just curious?
Yes, we've been very lucky to keep that intern on. She's a recent graduate of UMass Department School of Public Health. She's been very helpful within the department besides doing housing programs. She's the person that we've been sending up to the senior center to help and run with the meals. She's really coordinated that up there. She's also coordinated awarding the grants from the county for the sticker shock. She helped with that one. She also ran that program with the 9 liquor stores. And she also applied the last 2 years for the county for substance awareness grants that we were awarded to work with the high school, the kids on during senior week, a substance-free night. We had one planned, she had one planned, we had one planned with the school, but that was canceled last year because of no graduation. We just applied for a new grant this year. She applied one, and we did receive that from the county right now. So we're very lucky to have her. She's great to work with.
And her name is Meredith Gilreath, right?
Yes.
Let's use her name because she's doing such an excellent job. Meredith Gilreath. Thank you.
Right.
So from what I recall from last year too, because you did ask us for to support the second full-time inspector position last year. And from what I remember, it didn't even make it as far as town meeting because COVID happened. But part of the reason it wasn't funded in the full amount was because we wanted to see the receipts of what happened with the part-time position this year, if I'm recalling that correctly from last year. And if I'm not, please correct me. But it seems to me that you're saying that the receipts that have come in have almost made up that difference, or
Correct.
Okay, right.
Correct. Yeah, I think we showed that the housing program can pay for it itself. And I think looking at our last 2 years of money that we brought in, it does show that. But I think we wanted to I think the finance and everybody wanted to see one more year if that was going to pan out, which it has.
And it did it during COVID too, so.
Yes.
Yep.
But I
Thank
think
you.
what helped was the state short-term rentals really help us with those people registering now.
Okay. Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you.
Anything else for Bruce?
Can I just add, having an office next to Bruce in the health department, the volume of work, the hours spent, the Saturdays and Sundays, and the work that they've done is amazing. And there's some tired but very proud people down there because of all that they've been able to do, and through this very difficult time to create new videos, put out information countywide, reach our people and help keep our numbers low. And I think the impact of their efforts is evident in the fact that even though we might be red, it could be a lot worse if we didn't have the hard work of Bruce and his team.
Thank you, Pat. And I hope the whole finance committee signed up on the Code Red calls, I'm sure, and watching our YouTube videos, education videos that we try to get out and keep the community update on what's happening. Thank you.
All right, I think we're all set, Bruce. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
We are going to move on to the DPW. Jeff Colby's with us. I think there he is. Jeff,
Yes, good
how
evening.
are you?
Very good. And yourself?
Good, thank you. Welcome. Your presentation has been loaded up. You're good to go.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I do want to introduce some of our team members that are on the call as well. Lori Rosales is our water wastewater superintendent. Roby Whitehouse is our waste management superintendent. And Amanda Lima is our town engineer. They're on the call as well. We have a number of other vacancies at the division head level, as well as within the Department of Public Works. But those are our key team members in the management structure currently. With that said, I won't read you the whole mission statement, but as you all know, we enhance and maintain safe infrastructure. Some recap items that I'd like to point out. Some of these are still continuing, such as the DPW building project. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for being part of our building committee. We've had a very active year with that project and are looking forward to wrapping that up this year, hopefully sometime this summer. Parkers River Bridge project is continuing. Amanda could comment more on that if you want to hear more about that project, but that's a heavy lift for our department. And then Baxter Gristmill project was completed. So last year I told you it was underway, and now the exterior improvements are completed. The water pump station phase 1 rehabilitation project, those funds were approved at the fall town meeting, and that project is started. The contract has already been awarded, and we look forward to that being advanced this year. And wastewater collection system design funding was approved and a contract awarded from the fall for some additional design work in conjunction with some Mass DOT projects, as well as just getting a jump start on some survey for phase 1 of the wastewater plan. With that said, I wanted to give you a snapshot of what the different divisions within Public Works do. I think people generally have an idea, but I don't think they always realize how many buildings or how many miles of roads or how many tons of trash and construction demolition material or even septage that's moved through town of Yarmouth facilities, and also water pumped. Just to kind of give you a snapshot of what this last year looked like. It was a mixed bag. We had an increase in some elements and a decrease in other elements. And certainly one of the highlights is the amount of water pumped was a 5% increase. And you can see the other numbers there as well. I'll cover the divisions pretty quickly because there are quite a few of them in the presentation here. I won't focus on the numbers. I think you have this presentation. If you don't, we certainly can get that for you, but you also have that in your budget book. I want to highlight that for the facilities division, which is Fund 192, that budget for this year is on track. As you can see from this snapshot, we aren't proposing anything significant. The wages are something that is down slightly, but that is just because of a new facility superintendent, which hasn't been brought on board yet. But when a senior member of the team leaves, or in this case passes away, then we expect to bring someone on that is a little bit, isn't at the top end of the scale. So that's the reduction there. As far as the expenses go, there's a new contract, and a shift of some of the custodial expenses makes up the difference between that. So it's a slight decrease. A fair amount of what we're doing now is COVID can be funded by COVID, but in a normal environment, we expect that expenses to be able to be dropped for this upcoming year. So that's what this slide says, Pat. We can just move right through that. Is there any questions about facilities? I don't know if you want me to pause on each division or just to go through and take questions at the end. How would you like to handle that, Mr. Chairman?
I think we take questions at the end.
Okay, great. So the next one, at least in numerical order, is the tree budget. It's one that is rather small, and tighter times it was cut down to $10,000. What we are proposing is to bring that up to $40,000, closer to where it had been at some time in the past, and more consistent with what our expenditures look like. In recent years, we have had a $50,000 free cash request that's gone in on a yearly annual basis and have supplemented this budget. Realizing that we're in some difficult times, we're not looking to simply add that 50,000 in there, but talking with the town administrator, we felt that a proposal of increasing that 30,000 would be a reasonable amount in order to keep our tree maintenance and planting programs going. So as of right now, there's no free cash request to supplement this line item. But if this gets cut back, then maybe that's something that could be considered for free cash. Just wanted to mention that it's the same type of, or less of an increase that you saw last year in that line item, but that got cut back because of COVID, and we're looking to restore that a little bit if we can. And the greenhead fly is a relatively small line item that is flat as well. So next would be the DPW admin and engineering budget. That is Fund 421. We have recently been approved by the Board of Selectmen the end of last year to have an assistant DPW director position. So we're in the midst of doing a little bit of a reorganization where we're going to consolidate some of those division head level positions. And because of that, there is a shift to the assistant DPW director funding going into the admin budget. So that's what you see as far as the increase in that line item goes. The overall spending is on track, which is something that's captured on the slide as well. And on the expenses, there's no significant changes expected in that, actually a slight decrease, but that's nominal. The next budget is in numerical order 422, which is the highway budget. We recently had a highway superintendent that retired. And so that's another one of the reasons that wages went down in that particular case. And so you see a slight decrease in that. Again, same reason as before. If we have a senior member leave that's at the top end of the scale, we'll be bringing somebody on that's at the lower level. So there'll be a savings there. And essentially no changes in the expenses on this particular budget either. What I would say generally is my summary of all these budget items is it's pretty unremarkable. It's very, very similar to last year, with the exception of some of the salary changes, either contractual or just moving people around within the various divisions, not adding any personnel. Snow and ice. This is always one that's a big question mark. So in the middle of this slide, I've noted that it's on track so far. I'm gonna knock on wood here because we just plowed last night, but we have no way of predicting how many times we will be out plowing or sanding. So it's somewhat of a guessing game. We aren't proposing to raise that snow and ice budget because, as I'm sure many of you are aware, we can legally overexpend that if we need to. And last year was an example of where we didn't spend anywhere near that budget. Probably the first time in 15 or 20 years we were at that low level of less than half of the budget being expended for snow and ice. That's an anomaly. Even this year, we're going to be above that with just having plowed 2 times. But last year was a very mild year, as you all know. Moving on, Pat. The next one is sanitation. That is Fund 433. The increase that you see here in the wages is all contractual increases. This particular union agreement was settled fairly recently, and this is just adjusting the budget accordingly. So it's a jump up. It's just contractual increases. The overall budget is on track, which is noted on the slide, and the expenses are roughly the same. There's no significant increases expected. As you saw in one of the earlier slides, we have both increases in some amounts of waste, but some decreases as well. And so it really kind of balances out. We expect that the expenses will be roughly the same for this upcoming year. The next budget is the septage budget. This is an enterprise fund, and this is Fund 440. If you're following along in your book, there is no wages reflected in the budget for this year or next year as proposed. It's currently on track. When I presented the budget to you and the Board of Selectmen last year, there were a lot more unknowns in this particular budget, especially as it related to sludge disposal. That's not the case this year. So we expect the expenses to stay relatively the same. The very small increase you see here in this particular budget is just an increase in insurance costs, because this fund covers its costs. Insurances are part of the budget, and insurances went up slightly. And the next one we have is water. That's Fund 450. That budget is on track. And just for general reference, we did have a water rate increase that was proposed and supported by the Board of Selectmen. And customers are now starting to see that. That took effect January 1st. But with that said, as far as wages go, we are proposing that there's some contractual increases in there, as well as moving a part-time engineer into the water wages. That's the only changes within the wages budget. The line item adjustments are all, again, you'll see in your book, if you look at all the detailed line items, that some went up and some went down. That's by design. We try to balance the expenses the best we can. If we think we have some that we can lower, and if to accommodate some that might need to go up, that's what we've done. So essentially the expenses are flat for this upcoming year. The next division budget is cemetery. That's Fund 491. Again, you see an increase, very slight increase, because there's not many personnel taken out of wages, just one full-time person. Slight increase was just contractual increases for wages. And as you can see, expenses are exactly the same. The next division is Park. That's Fund 650. Again, this is just contractual wage increases. There's several more personnel, so that translates into just over $5,000 increase, but that is just union contractual wage increases. And as you can see, the expenses are exactly the same. So with that said, we were asked to put together some of those challenges. They haven't changed significantly from last year. We have significant water and wastewater projects that are in our future. That's why we're very happy to have the team that we have on board, and had added just this past year, Lori Rosala as our water wastewater superintendent. And the reason for the increase in the water rates was to cover significant water infrastructure improvements that we are undertaking now and will continue to undertake in the near term. There's limited options for increasing the cost for wastewater sludge disposal. So although we're comfortable because we have a contract in hand for this next upcoming year, that is something that's going to be a challenge going forward, and we've fully recognized that for a couple of years. So that one didn't change. We are looking at options and working with Ed and the team at some anaerobic digester, as well as other options to help contain costs in that area. But it's something that's certainly worth noting, because that can be very dynamic if we don't have a solid contract as we currently do. But that's going to expire in the next couple of years. Increasing vehicle maintenance costs is something that's a challenge, and that's not any one division. That's a summary of all the vehicles. And I think you can say that probably across town lines as far as all the other departments go as well. We're keeping vehicles longer. Part of that's by design. Capital Budget Committee and others have asked us to keep vehicles longer. And so because of that, vehicle maintenance costs are increasing. The way we have helped to deal with that in recent years is free cash requests. So it's not built into any of the budgets, but just those reoccurring free cash requests to cover the increasing maintenance costs is how that's been dealt with. As well as increasing facilities maintenance costs. This also has been a free cash item for primarily HVAC maintenance, but some other costs have increased as well. And at some point, I know there has been general discussion at the selectmen levels and others about adding some of these more operating budget costs back into the operating budget. But at this point, it's not being proposed, but I'm just indicating that they are challenges that we deal with. And the mechanism we've been dealing with that is the free cash request. So Pat, can move on to the next one, just recommendations for addressing some of these future challenges. This is something that's the same as last year. It was something that has been discussed. The Water Resource Advisory Committee has supported this. We need to do some more analysis of this, but a Water Resource Enterprise Fund is one tool that we can look into as far as dealing with some of these challenges, as well as a Sanitation Enterprise Fund. We're going to go through some revenues in the next couple slides, just so you can see where things stand. But we don't currently have an enterprise fund for sanitation. That any revenues they get go right back into the general fund. That is generally self-supported division, but they don't have their own funding mechanism, if you will. So increasing vehicle maintenance budgets and do more centralizing of those vehicle maintenance budgets is a good opportunity that I see moving forward. I think there's some cost savings in doing so. And also with the new DPW building, we have a full 4 maintenance bays that we can actually do some of that work. And so we really should look at increasing the maintenance budget because we've been falling short on that, but also looking to centralize some of those tasks I think would help as well. And then increasing the facility maintenance budget would also be helpful to address some of those challenges that I mentioned previously. With that said, I don't think you specifically want to review the capital requests, but I wanted to throw them in the presentation just so you were aware. So I won't necessarily cover those unless you have questions or would like to talk about those more. I know that you like to focus on more of the operating budget. So Pat, if you could just fast forward through those 2 slides. So I put this one in here as far as free cash requests. As I mentioned in the earlier in the presentation, vehicle and equipment maintenance has been a reoccurring free cash request, something to consider as we head into this budget cycle, as well as tree maintenance and wastewater planning. Those have all been sources that have been funded through free cash, so they should be considerations going forward as well. DPW revenues. I know that there's a lot of interest in what that looks like and how much the DPW divisions bring in. So I just want to show you what those looked like. As you all know, because of COVID and some of those other challenges, things like beach receipts were down slightly. There's the numbers and the decrease associated with that. Certainly not as down as we thought it would be because the beaches were very popular, but because we needed to limit the number of people at the beaches because of COVID, we probably didn't sell out as many of the parking spaces as we could have. Sanitation, as I mentioned to you before, had some mixed bag with regards to different things, but overall had a 4% decrease in their receipts, approximately 2% on the stickers and approximately 6% on the construction, demolition, and other fee elements. Septage also saw a slight decrease, probably related to some of the restrictions in COVID, but that was almost $3 million of revenue. And then water had approximately an 8% increase at about $4.7 million. So that's just a snapshot of some of the revenues. As you can see, DPW does bring in a significant amount of revenue to offset our expenses. But with that said, I think the next slide is just questions. I know I covered a lot of material very quickly, but it's the biggest budget that you guys review. You've seen it all before, and I want to leave plenty of time for questions.
All right, let's open it up for questions. Who has questions for Jeff? Well, I have 2 questions, rather simple questions. What was the rate increase for water, Jeff, for the on a quarterly basis?
Lori might have a little more detail on that, but I can tell you generally the increase on a yearly basis was 10%. So maybe I'd say 2.5% per quarter.
Okay, that's fine.
Yep.
And then the 8% increase in water, the 4.762 million. What was that increase attributable to?
In nearly every case, when it comes to water, it's the climate. So if we have a very dry year, increased water usage goes up. If we have a wet year, it's going to go down.
Okay,
In almost every case, it's based upon factors other than the fee. It's based upon the environment.
okay. Any other questions? I know there's some out there.
I got one, Mr. Chair.
Robert, go for it.
More of a point of information. Previously, when on the board, I used to think that the money that was earmarked via a town meeting for road repair, first two things. One, it started off at $1 million or $1 million. I think it started off at $1 million, then we added 2.5% every year.
It started off at 1.1 million with
Okay.
a 2.5 increase each year. Yes. And
I
those
think-
numbers are in there. Thank you, Pat.
I think that the board should know, this is my understanding, and I could be wrong, and Jeff definitely straighten me out, no problem, that the 2.5% was never part of the actual vote at that town meeting. There's
It was
not,
You're correct. It was not
Okay.
part of the vote. There was an expectation in some of the presentations and things of that nature that it would keep up with inflation, but it was not part of the actual vote. You're correct.
okay. For me, I'm a big stickler on doing what the town voted to do and not changing what what they were trying to accomplish at the time period of the vote. It relieves us from that 2.5% from like I said, a decision of the town meeting, as opposed to it's actually a finance decision. And second, there's actually kind of some wording in there that says when we hit 70%, and you're at like 80 some odd percent or 80 points. I know you have a very structured way of analyzing the roads.
Yeah, we have a pavement condition index, which I believe is what you're referring to.
Yes, and I
And
think in the article, it said 70%
It
or
wasn't
70 points.
right. I think it might have been in the discussion or in some type of presentation.
No, I think it's actually printed, but either way, there's just another thing that we should talk about, which is in my opinion, it implied that it was meant to address a problem of the condition at the time. And we are now beyond that condition that they were trying to accomplish, which again leaves us the ability, if completely necessary, to not go against what the town wanted to do at the time period of that meeting, but does free us up maybe to use some of those funds under, more urgent scenarios, which I think we're about to see, but I'm one of the ones that talk about that more than others.
Okay, and Amanda's here, so she could probably talk a little bit more about that. Those road maintenance funds are something our engineering.
Yeah, I'm not questioning. You do a
manages.
the problem is you do a great job, Jeff. You've accomplished a lot with the roads. They're very good. And I see some other areas that are not very well maintained. And that's why I throw you under the bus, which is because you've done such a good job and the roads are very well maintained. You've accomplished a lot. That if we actually need some funds, I think there's some money there that we may have to take under certain scenarios. That's all.
If I could just respond to that real briefly, and that 70% was back when the, excuse me. I'm just gonna grab some water. Back when that was the fund was under development, the Yarmouth roads were in very poor shape. And so 70% seemed like pie in the sky numbers. That's we've never seen that before. If we get to 70%, I will tell you, when we got to 70%, there was still a ways to go. I think by all industry standards, we do have good roads, but we're not the only community that strives for something in the low 80s. So maybe when our road condition index was in the 60s and we wanted to get it better, 70 seemed like a reasonable goal. But I will say 70 is not a reasonable goal. It really needs to be that 81, 82%. I'll let Amanda comment more on that, but we're not the only community that's striving for that low 80s. 70 is not a goal. That's a passing mark.
No, I don't want you to misunderstand what my point was. My point was, these were not required at town meeting that we follow these type of policies. These are policies that we put upon ourselves. That's all. You're doing really, Jeff, you're doing a great job when it comes to the roads. There's no complaint there at all. It's just, I feel that we're going to be looking for money shortly to put out some very large multi-million-dollar problems. And I'm a big stickler for doing what the town wanted us to do at the time period of the vote. And from what I can tell, the town didn't want us to increase that by 2.5%. by vote. And they didn't necessarily even want us to continue it forever. That's my interpretation. It's open to discussion, obviously, and that's why I bring it up. But we should move on because it's late and that. But Jeff, again, not a complaint about the roads. Good job with the roads. Really appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Jeff, I think it looks like you're getting out early.
I do have a question.
Oh, no.
Mark.
Stephanie, go.
Slow on the unmuting. So Jeff, thank you for your presentation and sorry, can you just explain, so on the water side, the water line item, it's going up about 160,000 in this proposal. And I know you mentioned some staffing. Is that 1 or 2 positions? And what does that do?
If you're referring to Fund 450 and the wage increase, that is contractual increases. Unlike cemeteries, which only had 1 person, and parks, which has 6, there are 19 positions in water. And so the contractual increases will, of course, be much larger. The other move is the part-time engineer that we have, which is Rick DeMello. He's our retired town engineer. We bring him back to help assist with the road maintenance program. Because the road maintenance program is under attack and has been cut back even at the last fall town meeting, we felt it wasn't appropriate to continue to pay salaries out of road maintenance funds, which is what we've done in the past. And so because of that, we feel it's very important to move that that salary into an operating budget, because if road maintenance funds get completely cut, we had many positions, salaried positions we were paying out of that. And this is a move to correct that in case the road maintenance funds take a more significant cut.
I see. Okay, thank you for explaining that. So then what percentage of that is the contractual increases, ballpark?
I think we budget around 25 or 30,000 for that part-time engineer. So the remainder of that will be the contractual increases. So a little over 100,000
Wow.
is the contractual increases.
Okay.
There's no staffing being added. We have vacancies, but there's no head count being added to any of these budgets.
So yeah, it's just the part-time DPW position. That's new, and that's been, right?
It's not new. It's been in existence for over 10 years, and it's been paid out of the road maintenance funds in the past. And this is an effort to move it into an operating budget so that if we have another cut to road maintenance funds, we won't lose a position.
Okay, so I'm confused about the road maintenance then. Is that just not under highway then?
Road maintenance funds is a capital item and it's voted separately.
Oh,
It's not an
okay,
operating
okay.
budget item. We
Okay.
don't have much that we can do out of our operating budgets as far as getting road work done. That's
Okay.
funded separately.
Thank you. I was a little confused when Robert was speaking. That helps clear it up. Okay. So on paper, it looks like you're increasing your overall budget 2.66%. But in terms
For the water wages you're referring to?
for the total,
Oh, the total. I don't know what the totals are. I don't see your budget book, so I'm assuming that's correct.
343,000. That's what it looks like on its face. But what I'm hearing you say is that a lot of this is just shifting around funds from what was previously funded from a capital perspective.
I wouldn't say a lot. That's just one position that was, roughly 25 or 30,000. As I just explained, many of the other changes were contractual increases that were due because of union negotiations. So it was far exceeds shifting one part-time position into an operating budget. Does that make sense?
Well, so which one is the one that was shifted? Because I've got the assistant DPW and then the part-time engineer in water.
both were shifted into different budgets, operating budgets.
I guess I'm just trying to understand taking these figures and sort of putting them aside for a second, understanding that there's some shifting going on, whatever, what the total actual increase that your department would be seeing, not like putting aside where it's coming from.
I'm sure whatever it says in your budget book is the increase that we're looking for. I didn't focus on that. And I think what I explained was the reasons for any changes in the presentation, but I don't know what the bottom line number is.
All right, maybe Ed can help.
Ed, Ed, can you help with that one? He might have stepped away.
Or maybe we can follow up with Ed offline.
I will do that.
Yeah,
Hi,
I'm here.
can you guys hear me?
I
Yes,
just unmuted myself.
yeah, and Lori, we can hear you too, so both you and Ed are live. Ed,
Okay,
do
I
you,
was just,
what's go ahead, Lori.
our increase in wages is like about 160,000. And then if you, that's what Jeff was just speaking about. And then within our expenses, the increase is another like $3,000 or so that just comes from kind of moving around the different accounts. Because I was, went back, in the past, they kind of combined a bunch of accounts. So now after having a few years of data on where we're actually spending the money, that's what you'll see is just a lot of money being moved around to the accounts we actually spend money on. So overall, almost all of the major part of our increase is just those wages.
And that's
that
just
you're
for
speaking
water,
about.
though. That's for water, not for all of DPW.
Just water, yeah.
Okay. No, I'm just trying to get a sense for like the whole of DPW. What is kind of moved around versus actual new.
So new would be generally those contractual increases. If somebody was due a cost of living increase, that's built into this budget. So that's essentially the bulk of that increase. Ed might have some other commentary on that.
And this is the budget summary for the DPW department as a whole, I believe, Stephanie, you're looking at. Is that correct? Yeah, so yeah, that's obviously a compilation of all of Jeff's vast empire together. And I think you're looking at a little over 2% increase for the entire DPW set of divisions. Yeah.
Yeah, and Ed, what I was asking is, given the explanation that some of these things are sort of moving around from one line item to another, and some are being pulled from what was traditionally funded through capital. I'm just trying to get a sense of what is like, because if I look at that 2.5% or 2.6%,
yes,
based on what I'm hearing Jeff say, that's deceptively high. And that the actual increase in terms of what's coming into his department might be less than that because it's being pulled from other funds, but I don't know what that total amounts to.
I can print out his wage detail and then circle the ones that came out of the capital and have been reallocated elsewhere. And I'll do that, run it by Jeff and make sure that I'm correct, and then we'll send that off to you.
Yeah, just getting a ballpark of that would just help me understand really what the overall picture is, right?
Yeah, I think it ended up being 2 people, Jeff, if I'm not mistaken. It was 1 engineer, 1.5 engineer positions. There was the civil engineer that sits, near you in water. I'm sorry, I forgot his name. And then
you're talking about Nick.
Nick, yeah, yeah, Nick and Rick. I think those are the ones that were in the capital that we moved out, so that capital would be all dedicated to the roadway maintenance.
Right, there's no salaries now reflected in roadway maintenance, correct?
Right. So what I'm just trying to get at, Jeff, I'm almost making an advocate, a argument on your behalf here, is that if it looks like it's 343,000, but in all actuality, what you have to work with as a department head is only like 200,000. I think that's important information for us to have.
Yeah, I think that's correct. Yeah.
So Ed, if you can get that to us so that we have a better sense of that, I think it would be helpful.
You'll have that tonight.
Thank you.
Let me run it by Jeff first. So let's say tomorrow.
Fair
I'm
enough.
not going to look at it tonight, so.
Okay, good.
Pass,
Good.
Ben.
How about the-
Any other questions? Okay, Jeff, I think we're all set. We appreciate your presentation for this evening.
Okay. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
You too. All right, we're moving on to budget transfers, and I don't think we got copies of these in advance, and I think that's something we're going to try to have happen in the future. There's one of them.
I thought you had them both, and my apologies, sir. So here's one. It is, am I on? Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not muted.
You're on.
So Ed, do you want to explain this? Hey, Ed, you still there?
Sorry, just had to unmute. Yeah, what we're doing is we're taking some of the old articles that were dedicated to certain functions that have been completed, and we're shifting those to software and license applications. And next week, when IT, I think it'll be myself and Svetlana present the IT budget, we'll be talking about moving from a CapEx model or a capital expenditure model to an OpEx model, which is an operating fund model. And this is just part of the funding that we need to make that transition. And that is so that, you know, we're going to cloud services as opposed to buying hardware every 3 to 5 years, having our own servers, hosting it, maintaining it, and having staff that needs to be available to do that. And we're shifting to basically outsourcing that by putting it in the cloud. So this helps us make that transition.
And these three that you're transferring from, these projects are complete?
Those projects are complete. They're very old projects, so we're shifting those off to something that's more current, which is the software license applications. For example, Mark Grills talked about doing the transition from Acela, which is our online permitting system that also has a tablet capability to result the inspections in the field. And we're shifting to OpenGov/View Permit. And that has, it's a little bit more user-friendly, and it has unlimited licenses, which allows us to have many more departments. So Laura Ruzala, for example, can put her permitting things online through this system, where before, because we were restricted with a number of licenses, we weren't able to facilitate that.
Excellent.
Anybody have any questions for that before we hear a motion?
I do. So Ed, how does this fit into the overall kind of plan that I think that we heard a few months ago about spending X amount every year on transitioning in software licensing and kind of going into the cloud and all that?
This is a piece that's dedicated to the OpenGov/View Permit. So that's one of the cloud solutions. So this helps us facilitate that transition for Acela was in the cloud. This is in the cloud. We're going to remain in the cloud with this particular application. What we'll present next week, we'll go into more detail.
Presumably this brings down what we would be spending next year, or brings us to conclusion sooner.
Yeah, so there's services to actually make the transition, and then we start paying an annual license fee, again with unrestricted numbers of users as opposed to the previous license where we had to pay per user.
Mhm.
So it will result in about the same cost, or actually a little bit lower, but we'll be able to spread this automation across all of the divisions that do permits and licenses.
With the document scanning that we're transferring this from,
Yes.
is it my imagination, all of these presentations are running together, but
I
is it
can
my
imagine,
imagination? Or didn't we just have a presentation with a request for funding, no, it wasn't necessarily an operational one. I think it was the capital,
It was
the
a
CPC
historic,
committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, historic like scanning of documents. And
right, historic
That's
preservation in the rehab of the old water building to store them under appropriate conditions, correct?
how does that play in with this?
The scanning is related. What we were trying to do previously with in-house scanning was trying to scan all of these documents, but no cataloging of the documents was done. So we're going to have a database of all of the documents that we have available to us, destruction schedules. We're going to actually destroy documents as part of that scanning effort. And then we're going to preserve the historic documents and catalog those. They'll be online through Laserfiche. And we'll also be doing things in color, particularly for the historic types of things instead of in black and white. So we're actually going to be utilizing a service as opposed to trying to do this in-house. And it's just taken a god awful amount of time to get this done, and we need to just get it done. So rather than trying to pay somebody, spending a few hours a week, I think we've got a retiree doing it and it's just not getting done. We need to just get this thing done.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion as submitted.
Anybody second?
Second.
Okay, let's do a roll call vote. Stephanie,
Aye.
Robert,
All right,
George,
Aye.
Jack,
Aye.
and Sarah.
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Okay, Pat, do we have another one?
This is the second one, sir.
Oh, there we go.
I'm doing better this week.
You're spot on. Ed, can you help us out here?
Yeah, yes, I can. And actually, these were done, several weeks ago. So I apologize that they didn't get you beforehand. Excuse me. The IT department is a wreck, and that's why I'm presenting these things right now. What we have is, and it's going to be fixed. There's a person that just recently got hired. They're looking at an IT director, but myself and other people are pitching in to keep, the IT environment going and trying to move some of the needed projects for the town going. We are missing, or we're low 4 full-time staff members in the IT department. There's 1 full-time staff member in the IT department that's just trying to run around and keep things going. And like I said, others of us, Pat included, that are trying to keep IT afloat. And we also have a consultant that is doing an incredible job trying to move us forward with IT. We used to be extremely advanced and we fell behind a bit, and now we're trying to catch up again. So we're moving full-time salaries, because we don't have the full-time staff, to our professional and technical line, so that we can pay the consultant that we have on board that's helping to keep the IT department alive.
Thanks, Ed. Any questions?
Definitely going to want to hear next week what's going on with the department. Geez, but I guess that makes sense.
motion to accept as submitted.
Second, anybody?
Second.
Okay. George,
Aye.
Stephanie,
Aye.
Robert,
Aye.
Jack,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
and I'm an I as well. Do we have, oh,
That's it, sir, for transfers at this point.
well, that's wonderful news.
So
we-
again, just, Mr. Chairman,
yes,
just want to just confirm with Ed and Pat that in the future, we are going to get those ahead of the meeting.
Yeah, Ed had sent me a notice and I thought I had attached these with the PowerPoints and I apologize, but I know one other coming that I'll send you tomorrow, so you'll have before the meeting. Ed, do you know any other that are pending than that one that we put together? No, I'm sure he doesn't. Or if he does, it'll be attached as well.
You're talking about the transfer for Channel 18
Yeah, 18
And
and
the,
the
and the
website.
website.
But do
Yeah,
you know of any others besides that?
I do not. There might be, some coming, but there's been discussion, but that's the only one I believe.
Good,
that's coming.
there you go.
Thank you. And I know it's tough staying on top of everything and, you're juggling 20 million other things. This was an issue, before you took that on, so I'm not trying to pick on you. Just want to make sure that we sort of set that standard and stick to it.
Absolutely. And Mr. Lawton's not going to let me get away with anything, so I will be on task and focused.
Thank you very much.
so our new business is, I sent around the Finance Committee write-up for the warrant that's going to be added to the warrant, and Stephanie was gracious enough to create this document.
I don't have it to share, sir. Does anyone have it that you'd like to be
Oh, I'm
made a
sorry.
co-host and I can share it, or you can share it?
Can I email it to you real quick? Would that be easier?
Yep, you could do that. See if I can make that happen.
You do that.
I've got it open, so I can.
Done.
Stephanie, let me put you on then as a co-host. No, not screen share, Patricia. Participants. Stephanie, co-host.
Okay. Can you all see?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm sorry, did you want to continue speaking?
Yeah, so I did email it around to the committee for them to read prior to the meeting. We certainly can make changes if need be. I don't necessarily see any needed, but I did want to get input before we decide whether or not to forward this to the town administration for inclusion into the warrant. Does anybody have any comments or want to make any changes or tweaks, or has everyone got a chance to read it? Oh yeah, we definitely need to add that.
Yeah. This was my insert something here.
Did you want me to insert something? Oh God.
I knew that there were things, but I didn't have them handy when I was writing it. So I was sort of operating more from the sort of narrative perspective and the creative writing perspective than the actual specific action. So I don't know if folks have any suggestions about things that we can put in here. But generally what I tried to kind of take is, a little bit of taking what we had been submitted last year, having it be, kind of historical retrospective, kind of obviously putting that COVID's up front, but then also saying, kind of reflecting some of the conversations that I've heard from day one on this committee for me that, we need to make sure that we're growing the tax base, and balancing the needs so that, not everything is stuck on the same group of taxpayers.
Yeah, I think the delay of capital funding till fall when receipts were more stable is a very good point to make. I think the support of the water infrastructure fund is important, and I think you had a part to do with that. Did they not, Ed, as well as staff?
In terms of the Water Infrastructure Fund,
Yeah,
yeah, we've been working on that for 9 years.
no, but I'm just saying the finance committee certainly supported that and gave support to that might be able to be in their report.
No, I did not weigh in on that.
Okay.
Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add to that? You can think about it as well. I mean, we can keep it short and sweet. It doesn't have to be too lengthy.
Mr. Chair, what's the deadline on this?
In the next, like last week. So
15th of January, I believe, was the deadline, Mr. Chair.
I'm well aware of that, yes.
But
I
it
did
doesn't
ask
matter.
Ian- I did
That's
ask Ian about
perfect.
this, and he had said early February would be the latest.
Perfect.
Is that the right spelling for Ken's name?
MUDIE?
MUDIE is the spelling. Oh, yeah.
No, yeah.
No N. There we
There
go.
we go.
So, all right, so are there any specific actions that we took that we want to talk about here, or should we just delete this whole section?
I think because it was such a strange year, there wasn't a whole lot that transpired from one town meeting to this town meeting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think
Okay.
that's fine.
I agree. Motion to accept as submitted.
With taking out those two lines.
Yes.
Exactly.
Stephanie, I think it was very well written, significantly better than I could have ever done. And, I think it does exactly what we needed to do.
And it's given the time period we are in right now, being late.
Correct. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, George,
Right.
Jack,
Aye.
Stephanie,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Robert,
Aye.
and I as well.
So I'll take that minor change, email that to you, Brian and Pat. Is that who needs to go to Pat?
It's actually Mary Alice Florio, but send it off to me. I'll send it up to Mary Alice.
Okay, thanks,
Not
Pat.
admin
I'll
office,
copy
no
Brian.
problem.
Yeah, if you could copy on me on that, that'd be great. Okay, I think we're looking for a motion.
I have a question, Brian.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
When are we going to start scheduling our votes and discussions on everything?
It's a good question.
And like, how many more presentations do we have, first of all? Because I remember we doubled up towards the end last year on voting. So we had 3 more presentations.
Three,
before
right?
that.
So we have the 3rd, the 10th, and the 17th. So
Okay.
The third is IT, admin, and the third,
finance.
finance. Sorry, Ed. And then after that is the Cape Tech, Lower
Yeah.
Cape Tech, and then the last is DY.
Okay.
So I guess, and maybe we can, I'm not 100% certain how we would do this, but I would assume right after our last presentation.
Yeah, like I feel like we were under a stricter deadline when we started doubling up on votes and presentations last year. But Pat, didn't you indicate that town meeting's gonna be in June because we are partnering up with the DY graduation?
It's a suggestion. I talked to Bob Lawton about it today. Because the new charter says the 4th Tuesday in April, we're going to maybe have to open town meeting and then close it and then push it farther on. And there's a procedural way to do it without needing legislative changes to the town charter. But the reality is, I don't know how many of you are going to sit in April on an open field in an evening, but we want better attendance than that. So we're going to be more creative. So I think we
Okay.
have some time into May and June, but so for now you have 3 more through the 17th. And then I haven't scheduled anything after that. And so we can then look at how your votes are and to create those agendas accordingly.
Okay,
Mr.
that
Chairman,
makes sense.
Go ahead, Ed.
yeah, after we get the school presentations, there might need to be a situation where we have to revisit the budgets. It's anticipated that they'll come in over 2.5%. And we're already at our levy limit without doing overrides, which may not be advisable this year. And we're already at our limit over the limit for the use of free cash. So, there might be some hard decisions that have to be made subsequent to getting the Cape Tech and DY budgets.
So would that mean we would bring them back to do another presentation?
Not necessarily. We can work with the town administration, myself and your team and capital budget to look at prioritizing some of the spending requests and perhaps make recommendations with the selectmen to trim the budget in some ways.
Ed or Pat, I would assume that department heads know this is coming. Are they going to make any kind of recommendations as far as potential cuts?
At this point, I've asked capital budget. We're going to meet on Monday and we're going to start looking at prioritizing the 1.5 that they put together, if there's a potential of cutting that. And then I think any direction about reductions in the budgets, the departmental budgets, should come from Bob Lawton and Ed, and they haven't sent any direction out yet. I mean, it could be 2%, 3%, 5%, depends on what we're looking at. Knowing that the receipts for short-term rentals are looking really healthy, but wanting to stay with the purpose of that, which is to protect it for wastewater, then I think it's going to be an estimate from those who are good with numbers and better than I. And then I can send out that notice to departments, but there's an undercurrent knowing that it's coming. I guess I'll say those of us who've been there long enough know we better start now. So it's not a 3-day oopsie. And we'll have that conversation before the formal ask comes out probably.
Do we have any inkling of what that school ask is going to be?
Well, when I talked to Ken Jenks earlier, and I think I sent this to Ed, he said that we're looking at a 3.5% at this point increase because of the COVID directives from the state and the staffing issues. And if COVID and the vaccines are effective, then those staffing levels can be reduced and they'd be much closer to the 2.5 that they hope to stay under. But at this point, with the new rules, they have to go with what they have, and that's much more staffing and many less children within a room.
Do we know whether or not they know if they're getting any federal funds or state funds in addition to what they normally would get?
No one knows yet because it hasn't come in. Ed, do you know something I don't?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Betsy DeVos, before the Trump administration left office, released a slug of money for all schools across the country. And I followed up with an email to Ken Jenks to get an idea of how much that might be. So there is some money there. They have excess and deficiency funds, similar to our free cash. And perhaps there would be other CARES Act funding that may come down the pike from the Biden administration. So hopefully there's some bailout there in terms of the COVID related money. And the 3.5%, just be aware that that's compounded by the fact that there was, I think, a shift of 152 students, increase in Yarmouth students. So while it overall might be 3.5%, we're going to take on the brunt of that, but mitigated by the fact that we have a rolling 5-year average. So without that rolling 5-year average, we take the entire brunt of it. Because of the rolling 5-year average, that's going to be moderated somewhat. But our Cape Tech student population increased dramatically as well. So we're now the second most students in Cape Tech, right behind Barnstable and very close to Barnstable.
Okay, well, we'll have to address that when we hear the presentations.
Right, and I had that presentation from Cape Tech with those numbers, so I can get that out sooner if you would like a longer period of time to look at it.
That's fine.
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful.
Okay.
Are we good? Anybody else? You want to say Say something, Jack?
A movie adjourn.
George? George?
You seconding, George?
Oh, I thought Stephanie seconded it.
Oh,
No, I
okay.
did.
Oh, Sarah. Okay. So roll call here. George?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Stephanie?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Robert?
Opposed.
I'm an aye as well. All right, folks, that's it. We'll see you
Aye.
next week.
Good and aye.
Take care, guys.
Thank you all.
Bye now.
Thanks a lot, Pat and Ed.